I'd like to welcome you to this very important event, the launch party for our online only version of the Expositions Journal, and also the release of Volume 4, the new issue. And this is really a wonderful project that we've got involved with in the library, and we're really happy about it. And we'd like to thank everyone at the Villanova Center for Liberal Education for partnering with us on this, especially Greg Hoskins and John Paul Spiro, who I've been working closely with, and Peter Bush, who was the managing editor when we got started with this. Right now, I'm going to bring up Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, Jack Doody, who I've been told was the brainchild of Expositions, and it was created while he was the director of the VCLE, and so here he is to tell you about it.
Thanks. To answer the question, which is on maybe some people's minds, but not obviously everyone's, what I did in June was to take the enormous raise that I got, and I went to Joseph Banks and spent it in an hour and a half. The raise is gone. But as Nancy said, you did a very good job, Jack, in spending your raise in an hour and a half. Jack, Johannes just very kindly offered to remind me to stop talking after 120 seconds. I'll probably do more than 120 seconds, but I will not go too long. But there is a kind of context that I do want to talk about Expositions. But first, so that I make it very clear, Expositions is the brainchild of the Villanova Center for Liberal Education. And although I might have been one of the founding fathers, like some of the other real founding fathers, I never went to Washington and did anything after I founded Washington. It is without a doubt absolutely clear to all of us who have worked with the journal that Peter Bush was the person who, with the enormous amount of time that he put into the journal, the energy that he put into it, and the creativity they put into it, that the journal would have never gotten off the ground if it hadn't been for Peter. And so, Peter, you need to be recognized and thanked for everything you did. And from day one, we operated through an editorial system that basically relied on ourselves, the Center for Liberal Education. We do have an editorial board of people from outside, but in fact, we have done the editorial work in our own program and not with our editorial board as advertised in our journal. From day one, Peter enlisted the help of a number of people in the program. There have been folks who have worked for the journal in terms of doing the hard job of editing and making decisions about whether the reviewed pieces that we send in, the submitted pieces ought to be published or not. We've had a book review editor, we've had section editors. In particular, a person whose discipline as well as intelligence marks him as a person of unusual character in the academy, where we don't tend to think that deadlines are very important. Bernard Prusak has been absolutely influential in making this work. The man who made the trains run on time. And all of us know that that's true, that Bernard was the one who always kept our feet to the fire in terms of making sure that we were going out and getting submissions, we were thinking of who to contact. In many cases, the journals was 40 or 70% because of Bernard's efforts to secure people to make book reviews and commentary. Mark Schiffman, who's not here, also basically in the first edition got all four journals in one way or the other submitted. So Mark needs to be recognized for the way in which he made the first edition come out. John Paul Spiro, formerly the book review editor and now the co-managing editor, has been with us from day one. Greg Hoskins started working on the journal on day one and is now the co-managing editor with JP. And to Greg and JP, we wouldn't be standing here today if you hadn't made the last year happen. So I really do appreciate the work you've done. Scott Morangello is now our book review editor. Noel Dillon has worked on the journal. Brian has worked on the journal. We really have had, and others in the VCLE who I'm not remembering right now, have been part of this process. So it's to the credit of the program that we've done this. And as a program, it's a credit to the program that this is an undertaking, a scholarly undertaking that was taken by roughly 22 people, none of whom have a tenure track position at Villanova. Getting people who do not have the institutional loyalty that others have, and who are yet willing to go in a way in which they get no financial remuneration, they get no extra consideration for getting tenure, is just a testimony to the kinds of people who come to Villanova and who work hard and who stay, and the kinds of people who are in VCLE in particular. So folks, you really deserve a lot of credit for doing things that you didn't have to do, and that in fact have taken away from other things that you could be doing in terms of being more interested in your own individual scholarly career. So I acknowledge and thank, on the behalf of the university, all that you have done. Why did a program that began as core humanities, teaching a required class to the students in arts and science only in 1992, morph into a Center for Liberal Education? Why did it develop a book series, which it has? Why did it start a journal? Well, the program that we run, the program that we're part of, thinks that the life of the mind is important. It thinks that students need to be introduced to the life of the mind as they come into Villanova, and that one of the best ways to introduce an 18-year-old into the life of the mind is through great primary texts, great sources, significant primary texts, and the discussion that flows from the reading of the primary text. And when a freshman will say to you, as they've probably said to you, you know, why do I need to read Shakespeare? I already read him, you know, or things of that sort. Or why do I need to read Dante? You know, I don't know Italian. I mean, why is it that we ask people to read things that they may have read before in high school? Well, it's because the conversations that get generated from the reading of significant sources is what liberal education is all about. It's a dialogue. We are in conversation with the other. And it's through that conversation that we learn. We don't learn simply by reading a book by ourselves. We learn by discussing those books that we have read with other people. And so that's the model for ACS. It's the model for liberal education in the freshman year at Villanova. And folks, you get the credit and the praise for the fact that in the last 3 years, Villanova has been ranked in the U.S. News World Report as one of the best first-year experiences in the country and for learning communities. We get recognized for both the first-year program itself as well as the learning community part of the first-year experience. And why do we get recognized for that? Because we're doing something distinctive. And we're doing something that not a lot of people do in the academy today. And we put a lot of energy into it. The university spends not very much, but more than $1 million on your salaries. $1 million that could go to adjuncts at $4,000 a pop. I mean, there is a significant financial commitment on the part of the university to this freshman program. And the university is obviously very proud of it. And I wouldn't be standing here with the title that I now have if I hadn't been involved in that program that the university cares about so much. And I'm fully aware of the way in which our program has made a difference in my present position here at Villanova. I will now, yield the floor to my co-conspirator here with a final story. When I approached Joe Lucia 4 years ago about this idea, and also asking him to be the first librarian to order a subscription copy from our partners at the time, Equinox, Joe very kindly, gently but with suggestive force, said, Jack, you're living in the technology of the 19th century. The technology of the 21st century is different. I would not advise you to have a hard copy. I would advise you to go digital and online from day one. That's the future direction of journals. I, being stubborn about the 19th century, thanked him and politely went ahead with my plans to work with Equinox, which we did for 4 years. But Joe, you were right, and you were right 4 years ago. And I am so proud that 4 years later, we have made this joint effort. And I appreciate the fact that you were willing to take someone who wouldn't listen to you the first time and welcome back into the fold and make this a joint effort here at Villanova. So Joe, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, so that was, I don't know, about 7 minutes? I'll try and take less time. So why is an enterprise like Expositions being hosted in the library? I thought I'd say a few words about that and connect it to our vision of where the library is going. It's not here because I always wanted to be a publisher, which in some ways I did, but that's really only a side issue. If you've been awake for the last 15 years, it's hard not to notice that the pace of change in the information environment has been staggering and dizzying in many ways. And the nature of the work we do in the academy generally, and more specifically in libraries, is really right in the crucible of that transformation. And I view my role professionally here at Villanova and more broadly within the library community to be one of trying to understand what's happening and adopt strategic positions and initiatives that really make the library a relevant enterprise in this changing world where the print material that's all around us here is less and less central to the creation and dissemination of knowledge, but still a part of that environment, and that we're still living in the legacy of that environment. And one aspect of that transformation has been and will continue to be the slow but substantial and eventually over time revolutionary change in scholarly publishing and in the dissemination of ideas. And I believe that the future enterprise of the library in many institutions will involve a partnership role in providing new venues for the dissemination of scholarship. And why is this important? And why is it important specifically in relation to an enterprise like Expositions? Well, one of the claims about this kind of change in publishing is that institutions themselves individually have an opportunity to put their unique intellectual stamp on the output of their faculty and on the intellectual agenda and mission of the institution. And Expositions is a really great journal for us to launch this program with, because it really does, as Jack said, bear the hallmark of our particular set of commitments in the liberal arts, to the Augustinian tradition, and to the entire legacy of this institution in forwarding both of those streams of our heritage. So it's really a great privilege to be able to launch this journal as I would say our first official peer-reviewed scholarly journal that has not come out of already existing activity at the university. We were hosting over the last few years several graduate student journals, and we're now working collaboratively with other departments on some new initiatives, and we will see more and more of this happening over the next few years. But I feel this is a particularly signal accomplishment for us because it really does represent the hallmark, as I said, of this university's particular set of commitments that go directly to the undergraduate learning experience from the first year, and that flow through the way we recruit and develop junior faculty coming into this institution, engaging them in teaching freshman seminars. So it's a wonderful culmination, and I think does represent a way in which libraries and faculty and departments will engage in new kinds of partnership for a variety of reasons. And I won't go on and on about that because I'm trying to stick to my limit. But we are very proud to have been able to provide infrastructure and support and collaborate on this. And I believe that it will help establish a model for other similar projects and enterprises going forward. So thank you, Jack, Peter, and others for the opportunity to be partners in this. We think that it establishes a great framework. I don't want to fail to acknowledge the fact that there are a number of library staff members, Stephen Spatz, who opened this program, Dave Uspel, who is a recent addition to our staff, Dave Lacey, Darren Poley, and David Burke, a number of others who have actually all had a role in making this happen. We try to make it as seamless and as smooth as possible to provide the infrastructure and the tools, and those folks have all done a great job on this. So I'm grateful to them for making it happen and making me look good.
Now we'll briefly hear from the current managing editors, Greg Hoskins and John Paul Spiro, and then I'll show what the website actually looks like with a brief demo.
Thanks. One of the nice things about being co-managing editor is that you can actually come up with a division of labor. And so we're celebrating and acknowledging two things today, one of which is the collaboration between the Center for Liberal Education and the library, and that's actually what I want to talk about. And then we're also celebrating the publication of the next volume of Expositions, a joint issue, and John Paul will have a few more specific things to say specifically about that. A little bit about the background of this collaborations, the fruit of which we're seeing today. You know, with any journal, especially with a new journal in the humanities, you've got sort of two primary tasks. The first is to figure out a way to generate good content, and the second way is to find out a way to generate a readership, to get that content out for people to see. And I think, you know, I'm biased, but I think we're getting good success with our content. We were struggling a bit with figuring out how best to meet our readership. And back in 2008, Peter Bush and Darren Poley began to speak in much more specific terms about using some of the resources and the collaborative potential here at the library to move away from our previous relationship with our publisher. We were printing in print. We had a web presence, but access to our content was actually quite difficult. There were a number of hurdles to get to. We were looking for ways to make the content we had accessible and readily available to all. And I think today we're very fortunate to see the end result of that work. I should mention one other sort of key stage in this process is that one other project the Center of Liberal Education is involved with is with graduate studies. We help produce graduate student journal Concept. And it was fortuitous. Concept also was looking to find a new web presence. And so you might say, last year in 2009, we kind of used the opportunity to develop Concept, and it became for us kind of, this is a trial run, a little bit of seeing what would work. And I should also say I'm involved in Concept as well. So it gave me a chance to work with, and now I can move on to mention some very specific people, to work with Darren Poley and the outreach team to begin the work that we're now seeing the fruition of which is today, which is the reinvented and relaunched website. So I apologize if I forget anyone, but I would like to say on behalf of the editorial board of Expositions that it's been a pleasure to work with Darren and Stephen. I've been working with Stephen actually very closely for quite a while now to make sure that the websites come about. We should credit Joanne Quinn with redesigning our masthead, which I absolutely love. So we want to thank Joanne, Dave Uspel, who we've kind of brought onto the project a little later, but has already helped us to sort of tinker and configure the website, again, with the goal of making sure that access to our good content is easy. And we are very excited with where we are now and what the future might bring. So I would like to say, if I may then, on behalf of the editorial staff of Expositions, thank you to the library, again, to Darren Poley, Stephen Spatz, John Lucia, to the library for your work. So thank you very much.
Sorry I didn't get the memo about wearing a jacket, but I got a haircut, and I feel like that's more than enough to ask of me. Anyway, I just want to talk about some of the people, many of whom are here, though not all, who worked on the journal this time around and who have been working on it. Beginning, I just want to thank my co-managing editor, Gregory Hoskins, who's just done amazing work, not only at the kind of ground level of making sure, the logistics and making editorial decisions, but also in the thinking of, well, we're still a relatively young journal, and we still get to have searching conversations about what kind of journal are we, where do we want to go, what do we want to do. We like that sometimes the journal seems to go a little bit more in a philosophical, theological direction, and then in others we seem to feature literature and history more, and in others we get to ask political questions. And it's part of the advantages also of the Villanova Center for Liberal Education, that we're people who are interested in crossing these boundaries or in not letting these boundaries, which sometimes feel overly restricting and imposing, keep us from asking questions that are older than these boundaries and will continue to force us to stretch them. So Greg just did amazing work on this journal, and it's been nothing but a pleasure to work with him. Bernard Prusak as well, who, as Jack Doody mentioned, was there from day one and always has been a model of conscientiousness and diligence, and as well as a guy who has come up with wonderful ideas. And so some of the ongoing features of the journal were Bernard's idea, and now we just get to continue working with him and expanding and building the content of the journal, and he's just been great to work with. It's been great to bring in Scott Morangello, and who now is the book review editor of the journal, and his endless energy and wit and insight. Noel Dolan, Kaylee Carpenter, Liam Kavanaugh, Brian Satterfield, Hannah Hintz, Fabrice Paradis-Ballon have all been contributors to this particular issue, and just the fact that there are so many names doesn't mean that everybody's only doing a little bit of work. It more means that we have a whole community where everybody feels that they like to contribute and be part of Expositions and make it happen and be a model for the future. So all of these people, it's been a joy to work with them, as well as it also has been kind of inspiring to see people stepping forward and say, what else can I do? Which is just not something I think enough of us hear often enough. This is as good a time as any to also acknowledge that, of course, none of this would have happened without Jack Doody. Without Jack Doody saying, basically, we should have a journal. For the reasons that he stated, but just calling a group of us into a room one day and saying, we should have a journal. What's it going to be? How are we going to do it? How do we make it happen? And him bringing in Peter Bush, Kim Paffenroth, who well, to be honest, is not as involved as he was in the beginning, but still was part of there. He was kind of present at the creation. Father Ellis, who, again, this would not have happened at all without his authorization and blessing and support in all the ways that support means. And Jack Johannes, who we're delighted to have as a contributor to the journal this time around, and who's also been a force from its origins, and that's great. And now Mary Lou Hill, who has, I feel like, never gotten enough official credit for her presence in Expositions, although she actually wrote a piece for one of its early issues. But I feel like has always been there at every conversation, and often found her way onto email lists and Mary Lou, do you think we should run this, or you know more about this than I do? Can you tell me about this? And so it's a consistent delight to work with her as well. So a little bit about the journal as well. We are still, as I said, a young journal, and as we've gone over, us being a print journal when libraries are getting rid of print journals, and then us being an online journal, but still the trouble of getting one's name out there. Means that on the ground level, we're a journal that for the most part has to solicit and in some cases come up with its own content. And so it's particularly in this past year and a half, it's been a matter of grabbing people in the hallway and saying, I heard that you know a guy who knows something about this, and we thought it would be great if we had an article about that, and could you contact him? Or I heard that you are working on something, and do you think Expositions would be the right kind of forum for this piece that you're working on? And it's just so something where we're doing a lot of the generating and soliciting on our own. We're not enough of a presence yet where we're getting a lot of entries, but then the good news is actually we are now starting to get quite a few contributions unsolicited, and that's been refreshing, just from a matter of being referred to on a website here or there or getting onto somebody's list. And so I'm excited about Expositions becoming a greater and greater part of the conversation, and I hope that this launch of us being a print journal does nothing but contribute to that. And so it goes back to the original mission, I think, of the program that Jack Doody talked about, that it's not simply about a group of people satisfying professional obligations or about some people with some, this is the kind of thing that they're interested in, and so that's what they do. They sit around and talk about it, but being part of a great and ongoing conversation that began way before any of us were here and will continue way before any of us, way long after all of us are gone. And so if Expositions is just one tiny part of that conversation, then I think we've all done our job. And so thank all of you.
All right, to close, I'm just going to take a minute and show you the journal. This is the new issue. You might, if you remember what the web presence of Expositions used to look like, you might recognize this interface, and that is because Equinox uses the same software that we do, which I've found to be an interesting point. And so you'll see we have all the same functionality over here. You've got your table of contents and links to full text over here in PDF form. And when you link on a title, we have these reading tools over here on the side, including how to cite an item, and also, if I were logged in, I would be able to leave comments and comment back to the author on the piece. And that would be one reason why, even though the content is free and open, you might want to register for the journal anyway. And it's very easy to do that. All you have to do is go up to the link at the top that says register and fill in some information. And that's all it takes. And I have a computer over there when we started out that is open to this page, so if anyone feels like registering right now, they are free to do so. The address for the journal is on the back of these programs that were designed by Joanne. Very easy. Our own domain, expositions.journals.villanova.edu. Enjoy. Thank you for coming.